The following presentation is a gift from the team at Streamline Publishing, publishers of Fine Art Connoisseur, Plein Air Magazine, and weekly newsletters Fine Art Today, Realism Today, Plein Air Today, and American Watercolor, and events, the Plein Air Convention and the Figurative Art Convention. We offer over 400 different art instruction tutorials and ultra high-quality video by the world's leading artists. If you like what you see, help us support our artists and our team with your purchase. Each video aired has a special discount code for today only in the comments section with a link to the video offered. And to see everything we do, or if you want to receive notice of new releases, new products, and new events for artists, simply click the other link, which says, "See everything we do." Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Rhodes with Plein Air and Fine Art Connoisseur magazines, and I love my job. One of the great things about my job is the ability to interact with some of the great artists. Imagine an artist like Albert Handell, who's been painting for what, 50, 60, 70 years? Imagine how talented and how great at painting you become and how much knowledge you get. I had the opportunity of going over to Albert's studio in Santa Fe, and he showed me some techniques that I had never seen. I thought I'd seen everything. And so I said, Albert, you got to do a video. You know, we know you as a pastel painter, but you're obviously also a great oil painter. So we did this video, Painting in Oil with Albert Handell. I hope you enjoy it.
The trees reminded me of my mother. The rocks, my father got in the way of things, and for a while the rocks in my paintings got in the way of my paintings. And the water that you can't stop is me. I know this is psychological or crazy, but I just had to mention that for whatever it's worth. In this video, you will learn the advantages of starting transparently and dry, not wet, dry, scrubbing it on. You will go from zero to something that's not zero, and from there you can go from the center of interest out rather than trying to paint all over edge to edge to edge before you got into the tree. The tree is important. That's what you're painting. Paint it. I used to draw a lot, and it fascinated me. And my mother was smart enough to realize that if it fascinated me and there was no victims involved, that it was good. I saw the covers of Post magazine or Norman Rockwell and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and it just excited me. When I went to the movies, they had these marquees, you know, somebody jumping off a rock onto somebody who's on a horse, and a lot of it was painted. And I said, gee, I want to do that. I can do that. And so my dream was to be an artist illustrator. I didn't realize it was illustration. I thought it was painting, art. I always had a studio, so I always felt successful. I might have worried about money, but I always had a studio. I might have had to go somewhere else to take a shower, but I always had a studio. I was always able to work. My feeling was if you're good at something, you'll make a living. So the object was to be good. That was my philosophy. So I found I liked to walk around stream beds. They just fascinated me. And trees, oh, I always loved trees. Why do I like trees? Well, as a kid, and we played punch ball in the streets, there were two apartment houses left and right. And at third base, where the private houses started, they had sycamore. They had some sycamore trees. And the sycamore trees were strange. They look like Walt Disney trees. There's some yellow, there's some brown, there's some darker brown, some lighter brown. There's no bark, it's like patchwork. Why do I like to paint trees? Well, I like to paint them close up, so I could really see how the bark goes, the form of the tree. It's a little bit more of a portrait of a tree for me, rather than a suggestion of a tree back there. I think drawing is like the backbone of a lot of things. And drawing a lot has to do with measuring. Now, measuring is a basic. A lot of people who don't know measuring like to do things where they don't have to measure. You know, they shove it all back there and all that. But when you come up a little closer, and you're doing part of a building, let's say, well, what's the shape of that window? How far is that window from the top of the door? Is the top of the door wider than the width of the window? And all this and all that. You might say, yeah, it's very architectural. Doesn't have to be. It's proper measuring. If you want to learn measuring, do portrait work. An understanding of drawing, I think, is important for an understanding of what you're looking at, even though it's part of what you're looking at. It's the underlying necessities, so to speak, because you want to paint. You want to paint. If you're not painting, why don't you draw? And if you're drawing, why don't you really study the proportions? Because that's the key to drawing, in my opinion. Correct measuring. There are a few things I want you to know about trees. And when I'm painting them, and there's background, foreground, God knows what else in the painting, what I have to show you can get lost. So I want to extrapolate for a little while and get up close to the drawing of a tree, and you'll see how this works. Even though the tree is straight, pine trees are pretty straight, but most of them kind of curve up. And if we're just drawing this tree and the light's coming in from upper left, and it was just a linear drawing of a tree, these lines would get much darker than those. So if we were just to draw the tree, it would be like that. And this would be much lighter. And then I like to say which side is a little higher than the other side. In other words, there's a slight angle. And then I could say, is this kind of going out and this is more abrupt, etc. So when I am working on this side, I always glance over to the other side, a little bit like when you're drawing the nude and you see one shoulder, you want to know where the other shoulder is. There's a tie-up. Okay. So I go like that. Now there's a branch coming out here, and when I think of have you ever seen the electric company when they cut the limbs off of a tree? You get something circular like that. So when I see the base of a branch, I mentally see through, And again, I say, is this a little higher, a little rounder than the base? And I don't worry about what's happening out here. I do worry about what's happening here. So again, it's linear, and this is the underneath plane, and that will get darker. Now there are two kinds of cast shadows, and this is one kind of cast shadow, and I come up here and I go right through, I draw right through, and when it's close by, I just block it in like that. Let's say there was another branch over here, and it's like this, and it's on the other side of the tree, and this gets darker because it's underneath, and this would get two cast shadows. It'd get this one from here, and then this one would keep traveling, and it'd be something like that, but a little lighter, because it's further away from what's throwing it. And this one would be stronger. So you have something like that. Okay. It's again on the other side. So you'll have that, and you'll have this. So there's two kinds of cast shadows. Here is a straight line, and the cast shadow shows you what's throwing the cast shadow, what it's laying on, and the direction of the light. So when you get a little bit of a twig, don't make a big deal out of it, but hit the cast shadow. And the cast shadow will tell you more about the twig than all the work you will do on the twig. As a matter of fact, if you overwork the twig gets too important, and something is wrong and God knows what. So the cast shadow, especially close cast shadows, are important for you to consider. Now there's something about a tree, and here is the front of my forearm, my upper arm, my forearm, my hand. When you get to my wrist, go right through the thumb and go right to that line there. Don't go to the thumb. Go right through. Make believe the thumb's not there. So everything is kind of facing you, and it's straight, relatively straight. Now all I'm going to do is take my hand and turn it over there, and everything else is going to be facing you, and you're going to see a twist. See? I'll do it again. It's a twist. Trees are not like toothpicks standing on the ground. They kind of spiral out of the ground. And there's a certain quality to a tree, and you can see it in the bark. So let's put in a little bit of bark. Again, the light's coming in this way, and let's say you see that, and then you come down to like this, and let's for the moment say this is the front plane, and this is the side plane. So let's give it a little bit more emphasis as far as the light and shade goes, nothing new. And we go like that, and let's say this thing goes up to here. As this thing goes up to here, if this was the width of that, then this would go up with it. And if we were to imagine making keeping to the width of the front, or whatever you want to call it, then the side here is starting to become the front. So you will see this to a little degree or a big degree, especially in the twisting and turning in the bark. So for my demonstration tree, I'm going to accentuate that. Now once I do that, it shows the form of that, and of course these lines are darker, and this here part is going to come in front of that. So that's interesting. I'll take this and I'll move it over here. I'll take that and I'll move it like it is. So this is behind this. Now I'm going to take the same thing, and then I'm going to take this and go like this, and now this part is behind it. Okay, so I go like this, and as it dips down, I get a little stronger. Again, we're drawing the tree. It's a linear tree, and this part here is round, and this here part is kind of angular. Can you sense that? I don't know if the camera will show that. I hope it does. Can you sense that? And this is dipping down lower, and this here part is coming down like this, and there is a slight, the slightest of bows, and then it comes here, and this thing is in the ground. These roots are amazing. Okay, I made this a little darker because it's dipping in a little bit. Like I say, I'm trying to keep this a linear thing so you could see the inner workings of a tree without all the foliage and everything else. This bark is a little bit thicker, and it comes down like this, and this side always is darker than that side, and you come up like this, and you go up to here, and this part comes up to here, and there's a little bit of a thing, a care shadow here, and if this was cut off, you would see something like this. See through. Learning to see through things is important, and it will be very important in painting, so that you see through the foreground and you see what's here to there. It's a little bit like my shirt here. Well, let's say one is higher, one's lower, just for a moment. Well, when you get to this point here, and you say it's lower than this point here, you can go around my neck because it's one line. And seeing through things is important. So, and these care shadows are very important. They're close care shadows. And as I do this, now this thing was cut, let's say, by the electric company. And you have that, and there's a bit of fullness to it. These areas where the branches come out of are the knots in a plank of wood. And I look at them as being very dense as compared to the rest of the plank of wood. And you get any woodsman, woodworker, and they like to get a plank of wood that has no knots in it, because the knots are so dense it could throw off an electric saw. So the branches are not like that. There's as this thing spirals and all that. And the roots are tenacious also. I've seen, as I like to hike in the woods, along stream beds. First time I saw this, there was earth, and there was water down here, and there was a tree that was like this, and suddenly it went like this. So I couldn't believe my eyes. But what's going on is the earth by the water. In other words, at one time, this was like this, and there was a tree going up. Then as the water washed away the earth, it became an embankment. And gravity, of course, takes over. But the tenaciousness of the roots was holding on for dear life. And it was winning. And then the sun says, well, come on up here, sweetheart. And I don't know if you've seen this, but when I saw that, I don't know, for a kid from Brooklyn, I thought that was something else. But so these tenacious things, this spiraling, which happens in all of these things, is part of it. It's part of it. Now I said the light was coming in from one direction, and if this is in shadow, then that's in light. If this is in shadow, you see on a gray day, there are no shadows. It's on a sunny day that you have shadows. So, so this is all in light. Well, look, let's take a little thing like this. See? And even though I mentally drew right through it, and of course, there is a cast shadow here, and it's strong. Now, I said these cast shadows that are close by are very dense. But what happens if I have a tree that's a few feet away? And there's a branch. So in order to see that, it's good that you squint your eyes. Now, with this branch, remember I said these cast shadows also show the shape of the form and where it's coming from. So so I look at the cast shadow starting low and ending high, okay? Now, to see that, you got to squint your eyes, otherwise you can miss it. And then you do some things within the cast shadow that are some detail, and suddenly you've absorbed this soft cast shadow. But first you eliminate, and as it turns around, it could get a little darker if it dips down and all that. And go like that. And as it goes up here, you see how I soften that? Let's say I had to paint this area. I would probably put a soft cast shadow on the top, so it slipped underneath the frame, so to speak. And some of these cast shadows are so soft they practically vanish. And if you have something stronger and darker in there, you're certainly going to lose sight of it. And the reason why I'm making this drawing is to kind of point out to you that it's important. Well, there's two things. There's the subject and there's the technique, if you wish. I tell this to all my students. The nice thing about oils is that they're wet, and the problem with oils is that they're wet. And I've made all sorts of experiments. I've started, I'll give you one experiment where I started oils with acrylic. That really dries fast and all that. It meant 2 sets of color, 2 sets of brushes, and this, that, and the other thing. No, I always like transparent paint. I should make note of that. Okay, let's start off with the mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna for my darks. I'm taking some ultramarine blue, and I'll take some burnt sienna, and I'll mix them together. And I'll take my brush and put some more ultramarine blue into that until it looks like a black. Now, dark colors, you really don't know what's happening there until you put white into it. And on this end, I'll take some white and mix it right into that. And I'll make it nice and light. See, now you can hardly see it. That means this mixture with white is now the same value as my masonite board. So I'm going to make it lighter so that you can really see what this mixture is like. And it's a beautiful gray. Now, if I want it warmer, I just add a little bit more burnt sienna into it. And I'll bring it up in value, so it's the same value. That's important. And you see how nice and warm that gets? I'm going to clean my brush off, or use a different brush. I think that's pretty good. And I'm going to take my ultramarine blue and put it right in there. And then I'm going to make it lighter. And make sure it's the same value. Make it a little bit lighter. So they can go right in and out of each other. And by having this mixture, I can go from cool to warm to neutral. So that's one of the things about that. Another way I have done it before is taking sap green and alizarin crimson. And you get something along these lines, except I try and stay away from the alizarin. It's like a wild card. It's a beautiful card. I prefer this type of harmony. All it is a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna brought up with white. Now, I like to use viridian in my greens. And viridian is an interesting color. I think it's a metal. And it has a rich color. Again, you don't know what you have until you put white into it. And I'm going to do that now. And when I bring up viridian, it doesn't look like a verdant green at all. As a matter of fact, you could go right into that mixture a little bit. But the nice thing about viridian is that I can control my greens with viridian and different yellows. So I'll take the same viridian and I'll take this yellow, cadmium yellow light, and look what I have. See? A nice, warm green. And I'm putting it right next to that, so the value is the same or very close to the same. And look how your eye can wander in and out of these beautiful colors once you have them very close in value. Now, once I put them together, your eye just goes in and out. But we can forget what we just had, and I'm going to remind you. I'm going to take viridian, and I'm just going to put white into it, and make a mixture and leave it alone, not put it next to each other. Look how different they are, and look how I can control them. So I'm going to take viridian now. I'm going to put it right over here. And I'm going to take Naples yellow, which is some Naples yellow has an interesting quality to it. Gives you a nice, rich brightness. And there are fast colors and what I call slower colors. Alizarin crimson is like a dye. And once you get it into some white, you don't have white anymore. Other colors that are slower colors, you can take a little bit of it and put it into white, and you still have white. So alizarin is one of those colors that flies around. Cerv's blue. Okay, let's go back to ultramarine blue. And remember I said ultramarine blue when you, let's say, well, it's blue and all that, and you want to do one of these southern skies, southwest skies, you put white into it, and you really lose the blue, and you have some kind of a blue-gray. This is pure ultramarine blue. I'll leave it like that. Well, I'll bring it up a little bit more so you can see it better. Now, Sevres blue, spelled S-E-V-R-E-S. It's an area in France where they're known for their ceramics and that blue. And it's right here. And sometimes it's it looks a lot like cerulean. And I've experimented with cerulean. And yes, it is close, and in some brands it's not close. So this is a Rembrandt, the only Rembrandt I have on my palette. I'm going to put that into here, and you'll see how the blue stays much livelier than without it. See? So when I have to deal with my skies in Santa Fe and northern New Mexico, see that's ultramarine blue and white. Look how that looks like a gray as compared to the same mixture, but with some Cervus blue put it right into it. My greens, I actually have three. Well, I actually have four. I have viridian green, which is my mainstay. I have this middle tone green, which is what it is. And this is a phthalo green brought up with yellow. Now I do have phthalo green right from the tube. It's a darker green than the viridian. They're right next to each other. You see how much darker that is? And I'm going to put that down. And this phthalo is a little bit like alizarin. It can get into your colors and not come out so fast. And that's with the cadmium yellow light. That's the lightest yellow I have on my palette. And it looks like that. And with this, look how harmonious this all is. A lighter color. Let's take white. If you start thinning it out, white and other light colors get darker. So let's do white, okay? So I'm doing white. Here it is. There we have that. Now all I'm going to do with some clean turpenoid is thin it out. When I thin it out, it is going to get darker. Look, that's the same white, but thinned out. I'm going to take some more and try and get a transition to this. So if you vary the pressure, if you vary the application of your colors, white and yellow and light colors have this type of octave to it, if you wish. But it means varying the brush. I'll take a dark color. Oh, let me take this. And let's see if it'll show. Here it is, full blown. Van Dyke brown. Now what I'm going to do is just scrub it on until it gets weaker. And you will see that dark color, just look at that here and go to here. So this dark color, and all dark colors, if you thin it out and weaken them, they get lighter. All light colors, if you thin them out, they get darker. This is good to know as a pastelist. I think that's where I learned it, because I can get more out of each color by just varying the pressure. And even though I was doing this with oils, I didn't realize I was doing it with oils. And I just want to point that out to you. So if you can vary the pressure with pastel, and if you can vary, not the pressure, but the application of your brushwork, where colors are put on heavy and colors are kind of scrubbed on, you can get more out of each color if you wish to do that. My painting process in a nutshell is either I work on a white surface or I work on a slightly toned surface, and again, you should experiment with this. When I'm working from a photograph, I like to set it up the night before and sleep on it. In some strange way, I'm painting it in my sleep, and if I feel good, there's not a problem there. The next day, I go right to it, and I put my hand up there, and I could see the placement. just by doing this. Now that has to do with, I'm sure, years of experience of moving. Placement is crucial. I have to have a good feel of that, otherwise I don't bother. At the very, very beginning, I like not to worry about color at all. And when you get towards the edge of a paper, just go right through it so you don't feel like you're frightened getting up there. And okay, this is good. And there's another little one that's coming out of it right around here. And it's thinner. And you have all that. And you have this. Okay, that's all I need at the moment. Again, there's a lot of green in this one. So I'll use my combination of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And it'll look like it's black. And I like to clean the brush off. And it's cold. It's a colder color down here. And I like to keep it transparent at the beginning. You can see how cold and on the blue side it all is. And rather than pile on a lot of paint, I just as soon spread it out like this and darken it. And I'm using a lot of blue, ultramarine blue in this. I like to see if the blue on this side is lower than, let's say, on this side. Just a little thing that I keep in the back of my mind. Okay. Now I'm going to take a little bit more burnt sienna and warm it up a bit. And a little bit more, I think. Okay. That's quite warm compared to that. So there's going to be a lot of green in this painting. So the one thing I don't use right now for the underpainting is green. And getting it a little warmer is always a good idea, especially since it complements the greens. And it's put on with a sense of abandon, so to speak. And if it does get warmer or cooler, there's no edge between things in the background. When you start putting sharp edges into the background, it's no longer the background, it becomes the foreground. And keep the sharp edges for the foreground. And I tell everybody, try not to be in a rush. Okay, get rid of the white. We don't need it. Good. Okay. The tree itself, decide if it's a gray tree or a brown tree or something. It usually vacillates between those two things. And this is going to be a gray tree, like a pine tree. Pine trees have a gray quality to it. And I like the way the white stands out compared to what I put on. So I am going to, oh, this is good. I have one of my light grays, perfect. What I'm trying to do at this point is establish the tree to a degree so it's not white, but it's not very dark. And this is going to be wider than the other one. Okay. So what I like to do is switch brushes around and get close up to it and back and forth. Yeah, good. Good. And when I get down here, I kind of soften the edges. I want to keep the sharp edges up higher. And that's fine. This feels good. If it feels good, okay. Put a little bit of this on. Now I'm going to make that a little thinner, this other secondary trunk, like that. Okay. Notice I'm switching brushes around. I tell my students, if you find you have a favorite brush, let's say this brush, buy 3 of them. One for the sky, one for the dark accents in the woods, and the other one for the middle tones. And you might be surprised how far you work with one brush. And if you notice that, then like I said, buy 3 of them. Another thing that I like to do, and I do this throughout the painting, rather than pile more paint on, let's see, this is going to be going like that. Let's do that. I would rather lift. I'm putting in some ferns, and I'm not using any paint at all. And I'm saying with these ferns, they have this type of texture to it, And here it gets lower and actually goes off the page. I like that. And here it gets fuller. Oh yeah. And you have that. And then you have a secondary one coming in over here that kind of touches over here, okay? And you can have something soft up here, good. And now I'd like to have a branch coming in like that, okay? Then with this branch, it could actually go over like this. Stuff like that. Okay. Now I'll take the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna, and now I'll put some viridian into it. It's a viridian, as you know, as I showed you, is a dark, dark color. And now I'm putting it in stronger. And again, I'm thinking of, is it warmer or colder? Not lighter, but if you were to take a photograph of the colors that I'm putting in right now in black and white film, you remember that stuff? It all looked like one gray. That's what's meant by value. And I'm just moving along, not all over the place, where my center of interest is, which is the tree. I'm putting in some dark viridian green, and there we go. And I'll take a little bit of the burnt sienna, warm it up, and I'll go right through here. And see, my initial application of the scrubbed on paint is taking the second layer with no problems whatsoever. I tell my students, you know, I teach pastel and oils, and when I get into the oils, I say the nice thing about oils is they're wet. And the problem with oils is that they're wet. Okay. I want to get the other one a little bit thinner. Okie dokie. So I go to my initial gray, and now I put it on a little bit stronger. And since I'm drawing within what I have, I like to go back to my initial drawing medium, which is basically the Van Dyke brown. Now I put opaque dark colors down over what I have, and I'm basically going from a warm burnt sienna to a deep, rich viridian to ultramarine blue, pure. Okie dokie. Now remember the light's coming in from the left and all that. So if anything will be a little bit darker, it'll be on the right-hand side, my right. So I start doing that. And there's something called lost and found edges. In landscape, it's a crucial part of it. If every edge is delineated, you're not going to have any sense of space or air, or, in my opinion, light. Well, you won't. Lost and found edges are crucial for landscape painting. And the way you find them is squint your eyes. You squint your eyes, you'll see more. Trust me on that. What I want to do is establish the tree and make sure that it stands out from the background. If it's not standing out from the background, something is wrong. Remember I showed you this in the drawing? This establishes that. Now, let me show you about lifting a little bit more, because if you can get the same thing by lifting instead of piling paint on it, especially at the beginning, you'll be better off, in my opinion. So here it is, and then it's going to go into a little bit of a shadow, then it's going to come out into light again, okay? I call that some kind of calligraphy, where it's lighter, it's darker, it's lost edges, then it comes out a little bit and all that. Your eye rides on it rather than it being so literal. Okay, you remember the drawing? Well, here we go. So I'm going to have that, and I need that. See how that little area suddenly has form to it by just doing that. Okay, we come up here, and we're going to have ferns. Now, ferns are not as solid as trunks, so they have softer edges. If for no other reason, it's a softer material. And I'm going over that. And as I go over the trunk, I try and see if I can get it, as it goes over the trunk, also have form of the trunk showing. Like that. So right now, I'm not even dealing with the ferns. I'm doing this, which has to do with the ferns. I'm softening things, and it has a certain height from top to bottom. And I'm just scrubbing this in there. Now this here thing is going to go like this, and here it's going to go longer. This is the apex of it, and on this side it's going to be shorter, and on this side it's going to be longer. And I'm going to lift a little bit more. So you get a sense of that, okay? Yeah. Okie dokie. Now, underneath this is going to be a little darker, So I'll go to this and I'll scrub it on. It'll look like that. And as I do that, this stands out more because it's not being competed by this. See? And I'm going to also do a little bit more of that down here. And then I'm going to do this. Okay. So as I come up here, it's time for me to decide where the edge is. And I'm doing this with ultramarine blue. I like to vary my darks from warm to cool. And like I showed you in the color mixing part, it's very easy to do if you keep it in mind. Okay, now that line is important, and this part of the line is unimportant. So that line is actually an edge. Okay, moving along. How nice. I need a larger brush, and I always feel the hairs to see if they're stiff or flexible. I like to have more of a flexible brush and a stiffer brush at other times. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to take pure burnt sienna, and the transparency should absorb this so it stays dark and part transparent. How nice. And I think I'll go into the ultramarine blue and get that edge. Good. And get it going a little bit more. This is just doing fine. Just fine. I want to go to the next step, but I think I should reinforce this one a little bit more. Okay. And get that a little bit darker, I think. And if I can, I get it round. You know, and some people say, if I look up there, it's not that round. So I tell them, keep staying there, and sooner or later, it will be that round. And if that round cast shadow helps you, put it in. That's the nice thing about getting out there. At first, the changing light really drove me a little crazy. And I thought God was making a mistake. And then I started realizing for myself that I had many options. Okay, this is going to be the base. And notice how I put the base in. I put it in not as emphatically as that, because the material. Now I look at the background as trees standing up. So to a degree, I'll have strokes going like this, which represents things standing up. And I'll go to the ultramarine blue again and hit it. Okay, nice.
Here's your chance to experience the inner workings of oil painting from one of today's most award-winning American artists, Albert Handell. By way of this exclusive instructional video, you'll get to learn from and paint right along with this art legend, whose work has been showcased in over 30 one-man shows. In painting in oil, Albert not only shares his best tried and true oil techniques, he shares the wisdom that is gained only through decades of creating beautiful and meaningful paintings.
I love working indoors. I love it with my oils. I just love it. It's melange is mixed with my working on location.
Being honored with more than 70 prizes and awards, learning from Albert is an opportunity that you do not want to miss. Drawing and painting have been Albert's favorite activities since his childhood in Brooklyn. This led him to study with the Art Students League of New York, and now, in his 80s, Albert continues to paint in both oil and pastels, creating in-demand works of art that are part of many permanent, corporate, and private collections. In painting with oil, you'll be captivated as Albert helps you see your subject better so that you can really capture what you want in your own paintings. Whether you've been painting with oil for years or you're just getting started, Albert brings a new approach that will help you become a better, more confident painter, accelerating your desire to create amazing paintings that stand out in a crowd.
Okay, this gives you a good idea of my oil painting technique, which includes truly transparent areas, opaque areas, focusing in certain areas, and then just marrying the opaque paint and the areas that are of concern so that both areas are harmonized, even though they're extremely different.
Albert is going to show you which different types of details work best when applied with a knife. This video also includes practical exercises where Albert will help you mix colors better and also show you how pressure and application can really make a difference in your own paintings. Take advantage of Albert's extensive depth of knowledge and experience with oil painting, and then be astonished at how your own oil paintings will improve as you incorporate this master artist techniques into your artwork.
If you are tired of slipping around on your oils, I urge you to give this a try. Not worry about finishing it, but worry about experimenting with it, experiencing it, pushing it.
Albert Handell, Painting in Oil, is available now on both DVD and digital download. Don't miss out on learning from this highly accomplished painter who has devoted his life to art and to teaching others how to create great works of art.
Well, that was Painting in Oil with Albert Handell. You can learn more about that video at lilyartvideo.com. Now let's get right to the interview with Albert.
When did I start painting? In a sense of the word, always. I mean, when I was 5 years old, one of my aunts brought me a coloring book, and I loved it. I went and saw a Walt Disney cartoon or something where it's a blank screen, and the brush went like this, and paint went down and turned into a scene, you know, with all sorts of things. And I was always taken in visually. And I was overly protected also at the same time. And in other words, they were always feeling me to see if I was sweating or something. And roller skating was dangerous, and this, that, and the other thing. And I liked to draw, and they encouraged it. It was safe. And at the corner there was a luncheonette. And for a nickel, I could buy 3-4 pieces of, or 2 cents, I could buy 3 pieces of white chalk. So I started drawing, and I liked it. And they told me I was an artist, and I needed that. But I just was drawing. Back then, we still had an Iceman that came with a horse and a wagon, and I did a little something or other where he was down the block and all that, and I was told, gee, that's special and all that. And then for a nickel I could buy 3 colors or something. And I was in seventh heaven. I just drew and drew and drew. And they kept telling me, you're an artist, you're an artist. And I just kept drawing. It was safe, and it was something I liked to do, so I did it. When I was in elementary school, it was Santa Claus or something. I drew the Santa Claus. They asked me to do it. I guess the word was out, if anybody's going to do a Santa Claus, it was me, so they called me. I did that. And then there was, I always liked doing it. I liked jigsaw puzzles because the shapes could fit in. I could match the colors. So they took me to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. You've heard of Pratt. Well, they had Saturday classes, so I went there and I loved it. And then, they took me, I'm 8, 9, 10, to the Brooklyn Museum where they had classes and drawing. They had an Egyptian floor or something. And I was encouraged. In junior high school, I found myself, instead of playing rough tackle, doing tempera. And then, high school, what about high school? So I went and tried out for the High School of Industrial Arts. And they had a model standing up there, and we were all drawing. And I looked around, and I thought my drawing was as good as anybody's. So when I came home, I said, well, I think I passed. And they were overly concerned about things and all that. And a cousin of mine taught piano at Music and Art, which is a totally different high school. There you go to college. In industrial art, you go out and work. You go to Madison Avenue. So they heard from that distant relative that he won't make it. And I came home, I said, I'm in. And I was in. And then in high school, I was so good until I realized they weren't teaching me to paint. It was lettering and whatever else. So one of my teachers said, if you like this stuff, go to the Art Students League. They have a sketch class from 4 to 6 or whatever it was. And industrial arts was in Manhattan. I lived in Brooklyn. I went to Art Students League, and it was fish going into water. And it started at 16. Before that, it was kind of like a dream. I don't know what I did, and it's fine, whatever I did. But once I walked into that Art Students League, and I smelled the turpentine, and I saw the old... It was built by architects for architects and artists in 1890, whatever it was. I just loved it. And then again, I was going to see my first nude. And then this lady walked in, went behind the screen, came out with a bathrobe, got on the stand, took off her clothes. No big deal. So I was drawing, and on the breaks, I looked at the other people's drawings. They were better than mine. I didn't like that. I was excited, though. I had mixed feelings. I wanted to be good like them, and I didn't like the idea they were better than me. So they said, oh, kid, on Saturdays. So I started going there on Saturdays, and my life changes. I always wanted to be a realistic artist. I always found composing the painting far more exciting than finishing the painting. It's as if it was more creative for me. I found getting into all that detail nice and tedious. It wasn't the thrill like starting it. I consider myself a realist with abstract an abstract bend to it, or a strong design. I'm a realist. Now, there's some groups that I'm too abstract for. And I'm not abstract enough for other groups, right? So I'm somewhere. I can't nail it down. Back then, in New York City at the Art Students League, if you worked from a photo, you're an illustrator. And if you worked from life, you're a fine artist. And I wanted to be a fine artist. So at 19 or 20, this notion went deep. And I've always worked indoors and outdoors from life. I've done a lot of portrait work. I tried 2 or 3 commissions, and I hated them. Yet I loved doing the portrait. And I wouldn't say I did character studies. Maybe if there was I don't know, I did people who I wanted to paint. And a still life, it means setting it up. I had trouble setting up the still life, but doing part of a room, which is a different kind of still life, nothing's moving, that I could do with ease. Dishes as they're sitting there drying with the pots and the pan, that I could take that and move it and paint that. To me, that was more natural, but I don't know. I couldn't really set up still lifes, but I could do interiors, I could do the portrait, and I could do the figure. Now, with the portrait, under North Light at the Art Students League, I stood further back where I could see the light or light yellowish color of the forehead because the bone is close to it. And then I'd go down here, and here it'd get redder. I did not work from photographs at all until I was in San Miguel de Allende, and I was doing marketplaces. Now, I like doing marketplaces. I grew up with push carts and stores with vegetable stands and all that. And I thought the marketplace in San Miguel de Allende was incredible. So I did learn something about black and white photos. I eventually go into Woodstock, New York in 1970, okay? And I'm painting on location with oils, and I start a little later with pastels. And pastels is not really en plein air medium, I'm standing there, and I'm painting this, and I take a break, and I say, oh, and And what I decided to do with slides was take photographs only of what I would have painted if I wasn't painting that. I was like a kid in a candy store. Well, the weather can get, to put it mildly, not for outdoors, okay? So I was indoors, and I looked at these slides that I would have painted. They're not just slides. They're slides specifically of what I would have painted if I wasn't painting that. And it hit me. It was like being out there. It wasn't black and white now. This was slides. Well, with trepidation, I figured, well, if I'm going to paint a landscape and I can't go outside, well, I did a nice painting. I felt very guilty, very guilty. The weather was terrible for a few weeks, and there was another image that just hit me, and I was able to paint them. I was able to paint them, but I had this guilt from a kid, you know. When somebody comes to the studio, and I have a painting on the easel, and they say, "Ooh, how nice," I say, oh, okay. And they say, where'd you paint it? I said, well, I have a monitor now. I said, I painted from the monitor. And I put on the image. And they said, you painted that from that? I said, yeah. It's a funny thing. The painting, it doesn't look like the photograph. But without the photograph, there's no painting. So what's going on? I sometimes have to wonder. I think I'm inspired by, I have a lot of familiarity from one work after the other work after the other work. It's not that I just do mountain streams. You know, I have around 3 or 4 special subjects. I love trees. I happen to like adobe where I live. It's very alive and it's open as compared to back east, which was like closed in. And I like the greens as compared to the adobe. It's a whole different story. Well, here's how it goes with me. Let's talk about landscape again. One, I don't like to drive for 3 hours looking for something. I live in Santa Fe. If I'm going to paint in Taos, I sleep in Taos. I don't drive to Taos, okay, because I'll get exhausted visually. So let's say where I'm living, the studio and the subject is 10, 15 minutes away, and it's an ocean of a pond or a waterfall. And I get out of the car with nothing. And I walk, and if something hits me, that's it. Because as far as I'm concerned, my eyes are open all the time. You know, I don't walk around like, you know, they're open. But if something hits me, to me, it says to me that something out there is touching something inside. And my job is to figure it out with paint. So anything could inspire me. You're just walking from the car into this place here, you have a rock face to the left. I could have painted that. Things that hit me inspire me, and I don't have any rules about it. I like my work to hit them. If it doesn't hit them, they don't have to bother. But if it hits them, I want them to realize it's an emotional exchange, that I got involved with something with paint that really hit me, that I had to do. And it's good quality, beautiful color. There's weight to it. There's atmosphere to it. There's beauty to it.
As you can tell, there's a lot of depth to Albert Handell and a lot of experience behind his painting. Even though he's oftentimes referred to as a pastel painter, he's clearly an incredible oil painter as well. The video, Painting in Oil with Albert Handell, you can learn more about it at lilyartvideo.com. And me, I'm Eric Rhodes. Thanks for watching.
Here's your chance to experience the inner workings of oil painting from one of today's most award-winning American artists, Albert Handell. By way of this exclusive instructional video, you'll get to learn from and paint right along with this art legend whose work has been showcased in over 30 one-man shows. In Painting in Oil, Albert not only shares his best tried and true oil techniques, he shares the wisdom that is gained only through decades of creating beautiful and meaningful paintings.
I love working indoors. I love it. With my oils, I just love it. It's melange is mixed with my working on location.
Being honored with more than 70 prizes and awards, learning from Albert is an opportunity that you do not want to miss. Drawing and painting have been Albert's favorite activities since his childhood in Brooklyn. This led him to study with the Art Students League of New York, and now, in his 80s, Albert continues to paint in both oil and pastels, creating in-demand works of art that are part of many permanent, corporate, and private collections. In painting with oil, you'll be captivated as Albert helps you see your subject better so that you can really capture what you want in your own paintings. Whether you've been painting with oil for years or you're just getting started, Albert brings a new approach that will help you become a better, more confident painter, accelerating your desire to create amazing paintings that stand out in a crowd.
Okay, this gives you a good idea of my oil painting technique, which includes truly transparent areas, opaque areas, focusing in certain areas, and then just marrying the opaque paint and the areas that are of concern so that both areas are harmonized, even though they're extremely different.
Albert is going to show you which different types of details work best when applied with a knife. This video also includes practical exercises where Albert will help you mix colors better and also show you how pressure and application can really make a difference in your own paintings. Take advantage of Albert's extensive depth of knowledge and experience with oil painting, and then be astonished at how your own oil paintings will improve as you incorporate this master artist techniques into your artwork.
If you are tired of slipping around on your oils, I urge you to give this a try. Not worry about finishing it, but worry about experimenting with it, experiencing it, pushing it.
Albert Handell, Painting in Oil, is available now on both DVD and digital download. Don't miss out on learning from this highly accomplished painter who has devoted his life to art and to teaching others how to create great works of art.